Monday, March 18th, 2024. We are meeting in person and virtually via Zoom to hold a public roundtable on the Board of Elections. Testimony at this roundtable is limited to the government witness only, so we will only hear from the director of the Board of Elections. The Board of Elections is an independent agency of the district government that is responsible for the administration of elections, ballot access, and voter registration. The board works to enfranchise eligible residents, conduct our elections, and assure the integrity of the electoral process in the District of Columbia. Our purpose today is to receive an update from the Board of Elections regarding their preparations for the 2024 elections. During this roundtable, we will discuss their plans for recruiting and hiring election workers, their plan for the counting of votes and reporting on the results, their plan to distribute and collect mail-in ballots, and their strategy for making sure that all vote centers are fully operational and operating efficiently. We will also discuss the general timeline for the election and get into the process used by the board to set and meet deadlines, particularly around the implementation of the Elections Modernization Act of 2021 and its requirements that all voters be mailed a ballot. This bill has dramatically changed the way we conduct elections. For example, in our most recent election, nearly 2/3 of voters voted by mail in 2022. So we will all talk today about the operations of the vote by mail process and discuss what we need to do to make sure it remains an effective way for voters to participate in elections. In addition, we will ask for an update on the October 6, 2023 data breach that involved DC voter records. We want to make sure that our website and other connected machinery are protected from similar breaches or hacks. With that, I'd like to note that the director's entire written testimony will be a part of the record. And so if you have not submitted it, Madam Director, please email it to ceal@dccouncil.gov, ceal@dccouncil.gov. At this time, I'll like to recognize any of my colleagues that may be in the room. Okay, recognizing none. We have, I believe, 3-4 hearings going on simultaneously today, so I certainly understand. So now we will hear from our government witness, Ms. Monica Evans, the Director of the Department of, the Board of Elections. And as soon as she is up, we'll swear her in.
Good morning.
Oh, all right. I have the wrong monitor. Good morning, Ms. Evans. If you would just give me a minute to adjust the monitors that are playing. Ms. Evans, we'll swear you in. If you raise your right hand, do you swear and affirm that your testimony and any statements that you make before us today to be truthful and complete?
I do.
All right, thank you, and please proceed when you're ready.
Good morning. Yes.
Good morning.
Thank you. And good morning, Chairperson Bonds and members of the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor and staff. I am Monica Evans, the Executive Director of DC Board of Elections. With me today is Terry Stroud, the board's General Counsel. As you know, the Board of Elections is a charter independent agency, and our mission is to enfranchise eligible residents, conduct elections, and ensure the integrity of the electoral process. Planning for the 2024 election cycle is well underway. The primary election is scheduled for Tuesday, June 4, 2024. We have posted the draft primary and general election calendars on our website. Candidate pickup began on January 12, and the deadline to file petitions was March 6, 2024. In total, 46 candidates filed petitions with BOE for the primary election. We are currently in the nominating petition challenge period window. Therefore, our offices have been open 7 days a week. Thus far, we have received approximately a dozen challenges. The challenge period ends today. Additionally, we held a hearing this morning regarding a determination on ballot access. As far as new legislation, of course, we have the Local Residents Voting Rights Amendment Act of 2022, which allows non-citizens to vote in local elections. This required BOE to make database modifications, create new educational materials, modify voter registration forms, and hire a dedicated multilingual staff person in our voter education and outreach division. We have also conducted internal training and modified training for our election workers. The Elections Modernization Amendment Act of 2022, or the EMA, requires BOE to mail a ballot for every registered election we administer, operate vote centers, and utilize mail ballot drop boxes. In order to properly administer the requirements of this act, we have created a mail ballot processing unit. We partnered with the Department of General Services, or DGS, to review various options. We have identified new space that we are currently modifying. The new space will allow us to have an adequate operations facility to count and tabulate ballots. The new space will be more conducive for the public to observe our processes. Voter education and outreach. The Voter Education and Outreach Division, or VEOD, administers year-round education, outreach, and engagement activities and programs. To prepare for the 2024 election cycle, VEOD registers voters and engages all eligible voters in the District of Columbia. Our education and outreach events also provide an opportunity for us to recruit election workers. Through our outreach efforts, we target special populations such as seniors, students, and those with limited English proficiency. Our outreach efforts include voter registration drives, tabling at fairs, and attending community events. Additionally, targeted outreach regarding the Local Residents Voting Rights Amendment Act includes multiple touch points with non-citizens in the District of Columbia. We have developed outreach materials, and we are currently planning a town hall. All registered voters in the Department of Corrections, or DOC, will be mailed a ballot for each election in 2024. Vote centers will be set up at the 2 DOC facilities to allow in-person early voting. As we did in 2022, we plan to train and utilize incarcerated residents to work as election workers with the goal of providing a higher level of exposure and understanding of the election process. Registering and outreach efforts in the Federal Bureau of Prisons will occur entirely via mail and email. BOE will mail packets of educational and voter registration materials to each facility for distribution by staff to impacted residents. Technology enhancements. In our 2024 budget, we received funding to purchase additional mail ballot sorting equipment and processing equipment. The new equipment will provide efficiencies in processing and tabulating mail ballots. We are also working with the Office of Contracts and Procurement to acquire additional ballot-on-demand printers. Accessibility. We have begun conducting accessibility surveys at prospective vote centers for the 2024 primary election. Once again, we are partnering with DGS to ensure that vote centers are structurally accessible. We will also ensure that election workers are aware of the Americans with Disability Act or ADA guidelines and are trained to promptly and effectively address issues as they arise. Election worker division. The recruitment of quality election workers is important, and their presence at vote centers requires attention to detail. During the 2024 election cycle, our goal is to recruit and train between 2,000 and 2,500 election workers. We will deploy approximately 1,700 election workers to serve at vote centers. Election worker training began on Tuesday, March 12, 2024. We are offering training classes for registration clerks, ballot clerks, voter assistance clerks, site coordinators, and area reps. Classes will be offered 6 to 7 days a week for 10 weeks. To date, we have trained 290 election workers. Mail ballots. As required by law, BOE will mail every eligible voter a ballot during the 2024 election cycle. Due to the passage of the Local Residents Voting Rights Amendment Act, we will also mail ballots that contain local contests to non-citizens. The Office of Contracts and Procurement once again awarded the contract to K&H. We plan to begin mailing ballots the week of April 29. Mail ballot drop box and vote center placement. The board has 55 mail ballot drop boxes that will be placed throughout the city. We plan to operate 25 early vote centers and a total of 75 election day vote centers. The locations are on our website. In conclusion, I would like to state that, as always, it is the board's goal to provide competent and responsive service to every registered voter in the District of Columbia. We will always review, modify, and adjust our processes and procedures wherever possible so that we improve our operations with each election. As you know, we are working diligently to ensure we have a 2024 election cycle. Thank you, and I am available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Evans, for your testimony. And would you please make sure we get a copy of your written testimony? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Today, I just wanted to make sure that the public is aware of all of the preparations that are underway for the June primary and for the November general election. As you know, this is a very important, significant election in the district because we not only have our local ballot, but we also have the federal ballot. And we also have the administering of the Local Resident Act of 2022, along with some of the more recent requirements that we have, such as the Modernization Act, which is the mail, I call it the Mail Ballot Act for the District of Columbia. So given that can you talk a little bit about, I want to defer for a minute discussions about precincts and things like that. Can we just clear up the data breach? Can you give us an update from the October 6, 2023 breach? You know, where are we today and what has been done, and whether or not any of the district's data has been accessed by the hackers?
Thank you. And so, as you know, we have been meeting with our federal partners, and just last week we had an additional meeting with MSISAC and the FBI, and the acquired information will all be sent to the FBI so that they can just do any further investigation on their part. As far as our systems, we continue to conduct vulnerability scans of our network, of our servers, and of our databases, and we have found no irregularities there. As you know, the breach was not actually of our systems, but it was of DataNet, and they are our website host. Due to the timing of having to launch the 2024 election cycle, we needed to maintain the assistance of DataNet in continuing to serve as our host. And we are closely working with others to monitor their activities to ensure that security patches and vulnerability scans are being deployed timely. And so that is in place, and we are confident that that has happened. One of the things that Octos so eloquently stated to us when it comes to a data breach, you're only as safe as what is known on any given day. As you are aware, we have threat actors constantly coming up with new ways to infiltrate and to gain access to information. And so you never know what is going to come tomorrow, but we are positioning ourselves so that we will be able to immediately identify any breaches before they would potentially cause any harm. As far as what has actually been accessed, we are still trying to get definitive information regarding that. We do not have any concrete evidence that information has been sold or that actors on the dark web have been interested in any information from DCBOE that may be available. But we are hopeful that we will be able to glean that once the investigation is fully complete. But as you know, just out of an abundance of caution, we did reach out to all registered voters to alert them of the breach and to provide monitoring services. And that correspondence came from DataNet because they were the actual target of the breach. So due to the guidelines, they were required to send that information out. And they did that in December. And we are moving forward with confidence that our systems are as secure as they can be at this time.
All right, well, thank you very much. I just want to make sure I understand that DataNet remains the host entity. Is that correct?
That is correct. We looked into other options. As you know, we are working very closely with Octo through this process, but given the timeline of having to move things forward with the election cycle, we did not have enough leadway to pivot and ensure the integrity and success of the election. And so the decision was made that in order for us not to jeopardize any information and any of our processes, that for 2024, we would need to remain in our current posture. And as you know, election planning really starts more than a year out, and we just didn't have enough time to pivot in that area.
All right. How recently was your Board of Elections website updated?
There were updates as recently as last week.
All right, and are you reporting on a regular basis the status of the data breach as information is made available? Like you just indicated to us that you still do not know the extent of the access of the voter file. And so are you continuously keeping the public informed through your website about this situation?
We are updating as far as new information. We don't have any new information in that particular area, but that is a good suggestion just to report out so that the public is aware that we are still actively engaged in seeking that information.
All right, please do. I just think best I can recall, when we have election seasons, um, people become very curious and they want to know on a regular basis what's going on. So it's just a suggestion, of course,
Yes,
but I think it would be a good idea.
yes, very good suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Um, let me ask you, since we're talking about the elections process, is there anything that could go wrong based on what has happened in previous elections? In other words, are there any issues you're paying extra attention to as we approach the mailing or the ballots or early voting or vote count center? Anything?
I would say the main things that I am paying extra attention to during this election cycle, one would be threats. Um, as you are aware, many jurisdictions have received threats, mail with substances, and threats to election officials. And that is probably the thing that keeps me awake at night because you can't take back an attack on someone's life. And we have received escalating, threatening voicemail messages left on our phones. And we have election officials in this country who have security details and actually have to have panic buttons. And I am really in a posture where I want to ensure the election is safe for not just our staff, our temporary staff, but also our election workers who are showing up to assist us with the elections process, because as you know, we cannot do it without election workers. And so their safety is of course, paramount concern for me. And of course, there is the number of modifications we're having to make due to new legislation. And so we are testing, because we are now having to incorporate non-citizens into our systems. And so that is something that we are paying particular attention to and working very closely with our vendors so that we have everything in place and that systems have been properly modified. And we have incorporated that into our election worker training so that election workers are aware of what is new. And as you know, we have many returning election workers who have been doing this a number of years. And so there are some significant changes as a result of the newly passed legislation. And so we want to make sure they are properly trained and have the information they need to ensure that our vote centers are running smoothly. And so I would say probably threats coupled with new legislation and changes that we're implementing this election cycle are things that I'm paying extra attention to.
Thank you very much for that. I just wanted to follow up. When you speak of threats to officials and to your workers, in any given time when there may be a threat to, let's say, your office on Half Street Southeast, how would that be handled?
And it depends on the nature of the threat, of course, but we are in the process of executing an MOU so that we have physical security on site. As far as mail threats, we have implemented mail ballot processing and mail processing protocols so that if anything is suspicious, we have particular steps that we take to ensure that anything that is possibly contaminated is isolated. And we have had our national partners come in and conduct training for our staff just to ensure they are aware of their surroundings and are aware of any escalating situations in the office with members of the public. As you know, mental health is real, and we have seen several instances of individuals coming into our office who become increasingly agitated. And so we've also had to put protocols in place to ensure that our staff members are safe as they're dealing with members of the public. And it's clear that there are some mental illness challenges that we are dealing with, but we've also received some tips on how to de-escalate a situation. And we have, and of course, I don't want to go into all the protocols on the record, just to ensure that I'm not divulging information to potential threat actors, but we do have some things in place to make staff members safe as they perform their duties.
And so should I also assume that the new location where you're going to tally the ballots and ultimately tally the votes would also have, would it be physical security, or are there other systems in place?
Yes, we are contracting to have physical security at that location as well, but we will also have additional protocols to ensure safety.
All right. I don't know how the panic button system works, but I know that in many of the government installations, they have something like that. So I'd like to follow up with you on, whether or not that is something that you might want to have as a part of your situation.
Yes, and that has been explored, and I would love to follow up with you about the details.
Okay, thank you. I'm just reading through all my questions about safety, public safety as it relates to making sure the facility and what you're trying to get done through the elections process we've covered everything. Oh, now what are you doing to get ahead of any potential technological issues that may happen, unfold, like with the scanners or the poll pads, maybe even a data breach?
Yes. Well, training, of course, is key. And we did recently visit other jurisdictions that have been implementing full mail ballot processes for years. And we have had the opportunity to look at some of the policies and procedures they have in place, review their systems, review their operations. And so that is, of course, something that is very important and was very helpful. Just in general, elections communities, we work together. We try not to reinvent the wheel, and we have close partnerships with election workers and election officials in other jurisdictions. And so that on-site visit was very helpful as we look to put our policies, procedures, and protocols in place, and to ensure that they are modified appropriately. So those are some of the things that we're doing to pivot. We're also working with our vendors to ensure that everything can be tested ahead of time. And so once modifications have been completed, we are ensuring that we have an opportunity to test those modifications based on test scripts, so that we can identify any anomalies or identify anything that may not be working as required based on the legislation.
And so let's say that suddenly the scanners go down. What is our plan for that? Particularly if the scanners are down, and how what, do you have a paper, paper and pencil, the old school stuff that we would be using, or what do we do?
Yes, when you say scanners, can you just clarify which scanners you're referencing?
Oh, that's right, you have several. Let's say it's time to print out a ballot because your ballots are printed, let's say by, single member district,
Okay, yeah.
advisory neighborhood commission. Are they gonna all be pre-printed?
No, they're not pre-printed because any particular voter can go to any of our vote centers. We have ballot on demand printers. And so that enables us to print ballots on site that are specific to that individual voter and their SMD. If a scanner goes down, we also have touchscreen devices in each vote center, and we can easily pivot to the touchscreen devices for voting. We also have backup equipment that we can deploy. We have area reps and technicians that are on site to assist with anything that happens at a vote center. And if we need to swap out equipment, we can do that pretty easily. And we do keep and maintain tested equipment at our location to deploy in those instances where we need to do so.
All right, you're telling me that you've got personnel, technical personnel that will be on site. And we're now talking about, let's use the 25 early voting locations you mentioned. So we will have a technician at each of those sites during the entire time frame for the vote?
Yeah, typically technicians are assigned a couple of vote centers in close proximity. And so they're able to cover, so we make assignments. So there is not necessarily a technician at each vote center at any given time, but we also have site coordinators and they do receive basic troubleshooting training as part of their duties.
All right, so some of your, I think you mentioned 2,500 election workers will at least be trained to do this, or trained to be deployed to do this kind of repair or substitution of equipment?
Well, to do the basic troubleshooting, and then they can easily get a fully trained technician there in short order.
All right, okay. And so, all right, I kind of see where you're going, but let's just say the, God forbid, but let's say our electrical grid goes out and your equipment is no longer functioning and you have a line of individuals on election day trying to get in to the vote center. What do we do?
Yes, and we do have backup batteries in our equipment, so we will be able to shift pretty quickly. And if need be, if we need to, get ballots to a particular location, we can do that as well. And fortunately, as you know, each eligible voter will be mailed a ballot. And so there are options for them to utilize that ballot. But we also, our Chief Information Security Officer is working on finalizing our COOP, or continuing operations plan, so that everyone is aware of next steps should anything happen as far as natural disaster, electrical grid issues, et cetera. And that is information that site coordinators would have, as they would be the point person to resolve any issues at a vote center, or working with multiple vote centers that are experiencing issues.
Well, thank you very much for that.
The other
Are
thing,
you still
Um,
committing? I'm sorry, go right ahead, Ms. Evans.
I just wanted to say we also have generators on board. So
Okay, all right, great. Um, what steps are you taking to ensure that all vote centers are ADA compliant?
as I mentioned, we conduct surveys of each vote center. We have an ADA coordinator on staff, and those visits have already begun. And so they have a checklist. They check to ensure that they are structurally accessible. We also look at things like Wi-Fi and internet, and just making sure we have the correct space requirements in any location. And so we work with other DC agencies and partner with them to test and then also to modify locations. In some vote centers, we've had to install temporary ramps. We've had to remove or center um, I guess, what are they, door jams, so that we can make door entry wider for individuals in wheelchairs or who have other devices to assist them with mobility. So there are a number of things. And then we also make sure we have interpreters on site. We utilize language line, and that is to ensure that they are accessible as far as language access.
Oh, great. Ms. Evans, what is the what is the status of your move into the new office space and the vote tallying facility?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, we are working with DGS, and the space is under our control. We are having electrical outlets updated, and for those that do not work in the space, those are being fixed. And then working on things like lighting and accessibility as far as being able to ensure easy access into the area, but then also ensuring we have clear sight lines in the facility. So all of that is moving forward. DGS has been really wonderful and responsive to our needs and requests for that space. We have gone through and mapped out where all of the equipment will be placed, which has helped us to determine where we need the high voltage electrical sockets, and the work has begun.
All right, so what is your deadline for actually having the center ready for workers to come into the facility?
The facility will be ready before or by March 31st. At that point, we're just waiting because, as you know, we received additional equipment. And so some of the additional equipment will not be delivered until April. And so once the final equipment, the new equipment is delivered, then it will be fully up and running. But as far as the equipment we already have in our possession, that will be moved in probably the first week in April. And we will be prepared to just position the space so that we have areas to facilitate mail counting, mail tabulation, and then just the scanning using our Agilus machines when those mail ballots come in. And then signature verification will also occur in that space. And so we have pretty much mapped all of that out, and it would just be a matter of providing clear and safe paths for observation that will not interfere with the work of election workers as members of the public observe that process.
So how will this new space allow for public to view the tallying and counting of ballots?
Well, first, we will issue a press release when we are announcing what is happening in that space and how the public can gain access. We do ask individuals to let us know in advance when they're planning to come, just so that we can ensure that we don't have too many people in the space at any given time. They would come in, they would check into the facility, and then they are able to move throughout the facility to look at the various things that are happening. And of course, depending on when they come, that will determine what they'll be able to view, whether it's logic and accuracy, processing mail ballots, or tabulating ballots, or even observing the signature verification process. And of course, some of those later things, such as signature verification, will come a little later in the process because we will first have to process the ballots before we get to the signature verification phase.
So, Ms. Evans, are you telling us that the first thing that will happen in the space is the processing of the mail-in ballots?
The first public facing operation that will happen will be logic and accuracy testing. We test each piece of voting equipment before it is deployed to a vote center. And so we have a developed script based on the final ballot that is completed. And each piece of equipment is tested to ensure there are no anomalies. If there are any issues or problems with any piece of equipment, it is never deployed to a vote center. And so that is the first thing that is viewable by the public. And we will issue a press release with the guidelines about viewing that prior to engaging in logic and accuracy testing. And of course, the time frame is always somewhat of an estimate because sometimes it goes a little faster, sometimes it goes a little more slowly, just depending on what obstacles we face once we begin that testing.
Okay, and what is the second thing that public will be able to view from that facility?
After we test and ensure the equipment is ready to be deployed, the next thing will be that will pertain to our mail ballot processing. And so once we actually start getting mail ballots in, they will be run through the Agilis machine that provides the count and actually provides the information for the ballot tracker to be updated. And so as we are scanning those ballots, they will be able to review that scan. After that, they go to tables of our mail ballot processing teams, and they will actually remove the flap over the signature and prepare those ballots for a second run through the Agilis machine so that the signatures from those ballots can be captured. And as those signatures are captured, those actually go to a mail ballot processing team so that we can ensure we are conducting 100% signature verification. The teams that are removing the signature flap, once they get those envelopes back, they will begin the process of separating those ballots from the removing the secrecy sleeve from the outer sleeve so that at some point we can begin to separate those so that we do not have the ability to identify a specific voter before we start tabulating. And so all of that is viewable. The tabulation process is us running the ballots through the 950 machines, and that is what does the actual count of the ballots. And that is what is observed.
All right, and so the processing of mail ballots, when does that usually begin?
Well, right now, ballots are scheduled to go out the last week of April. Mail ballot drop boxes will be open around that time. And then, of course, voters can process or deposit their voted ballots through the U.S. Postal Service. And so with ballots going out the last week in April, we will probably begin the processing of those mail ballots roughly between 7 and 10 days later. It depends on when they really start coming in. Sometimes voters choose to deposit their mail ballots at vote centers, so we don't see a lot of use of U.S. Postal Service. It varies somewhat just based on the number of ballots because we hate to invite the public to come and view a process, and we have one tray of ballots that can be done in 30 minutes. And so there's not a lot to view at that time. And so we do hold ballots so that we have a process that actually is observable.
All right. And so once these ballots are returned, you have this process, a way one to verify that you have received from whomever's name is on this little flap. And then, so that's then becomes a separate activity. And then the next activity is to remove the actual ballot from the outer sleeve. And then that ballot that has been cast, marked, is tallied through your equipment. Am I correct?
Yes, I believe.
Okay.
I just didn't hear you say once the flap is removed, we do have to run those ballots through the machine to capture the signature once it's exposed.
Oh, okay. So I see. So the signature is exposed and the ballots go back through the system.
To capture that signature. So there are
Okay, and that way you know that I, Anita, for instance, that I voted already, because you have my ballot there.
Correct.
And then at later, it will be what happens to the actual ballot? That's what I'm trying to understand now.
Okay, so after we do the second run through the Agilis machine and the signature is captured in our system, those ballots go to the mail ballot processing team.
Okay.
And then they remove the secrecy sleeve from the return envelope ballot. And ballots have to be flattened to ensure that they run through the 950, and then ultimately they go to the DS 950 for tabulation.
Okay, so 950, the equipment you refer to as 950, that is the equipment that actually counts the marks that have been made on the ballot.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, we're going to get there. We're going to, and I want the public to understand there are many steps. So if you come and you just see one part of it, you perhaps have missed maybe the most important part of it. All
Yes.
right.
When individuals come to observe the process, we do let them know what they're observing.
Okay.
We have actually had individuals come in and they were really impressed with the confidence they had in the process once it was explained to them and they saw the different levels. It's one thing to explain it, it's another thing to see it.
All right. Thank you very much. And so you mentioned that your press release will announce the fact that the public facing period is open. Do you have a sense of how many observers you can have in, I guess, some set aside observation space? Or how are you planning on handling that?
Quite honestly, we don't typically get a lot of interest. And so our main concern is just safety and then making sure the work of the staff members, that there's no compromise to what they're doing. And so we don't have specific numbers, and we will have to look at that with this being new space. we were able to have parameters based on our old space, but with this being new space, we will have some soft guidelines about how many we can receive at any given time in the space for the safety of the public coming in, but then also to ensure we're not in any way providing too much of a distraction that would interfere with the work of the election workers. But quite honestly, we've never had to invoke those limits because we just honestly have not had that much interest in members of the public coming to observe.
So, Ms. Evans, am I thinking that um, each of the divisions of work will have the tables that are used would be labeled so that any observer would be able to understand what is planned to happen at any of the workstations? And then are you saying that if I wanted to observe, I could just come in? I've indicated I'm coming. I come and I can walk from table to table, or is there some set aside observation kind of way for me to, without being or having the ability to walk around, trying to understand how I would function as an observer?
Absolutely. So we'll essentially have some crowd control chains or barriers around the tables just to ensure that members of the public are not able to have direct contact with the ballots and with the information. So there will be some distance separating members of the public from the work so that we can ensure the integrity of the process. But you can walk freely throughout the areas that are marked off and observe the processes in each one of those stages that I identified.
All right, well, that's a very important point. Thank you so much. You said you had started employee training this past week, Wednesday, I believe, and you had 290 individuals already trained. That's not anywhere near these 2,500. So what is this 290 that have been trained kind of average for an election cycle? Or are you a little below or even higher than usual?
Absolutely. And just so you know, we always start off a little slower. One, we have new trainers at during any given election cycle. And so we want to make sure they have an opportunity and they have a good grasp of the material. So we have a shadowing process where we have senior election workers and senior trainers who are available to assist some of our newer individuals. And so we really don't have a schedule that is quite as aggressive when we begin. And so, as you know, we just started last week and we are on track for recruitment. We don't foresee any recruitment issues right now, but scheduling will definitely pick up now that our trainers have had a little more experience and are comfortable, and we don't have to provide backup kind of shadowing opportunities to ensure that they are comfortable with the material and have a full grasp of it. So at this point, there are no concerns with us being able to recruit the requisite number of election workers we need to deploy.
All right, and so within this 290 that you trained, how many were what you consider senior trainers, those persons who have worked with the board previously?
Well, we have specifically identified two senior trainers who have worked with us for a number of years. And then we have another training lead, if you will, who has also worked with us. So three, and then one is part-time. Four, we really can consider our top caliber and very experienced election trainers. We are very happy with the new trainers we have identified for this year. they're catching on very quickly, and we received good feedback. So we are confident that we have a very strong training team in place to conduct the necessary classes for all of the positions in a vote center.
All right, and so you're saying of the 293 have had some previous work with the board
But trainers,
as trainers?
I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about of the trainers we have who are the experienced trainers. As far as the 290, I would have to get you a breakdown as far as who is returning and who are new within that 290 breakdown. I don't have a breakdown in front of me with that information.
All right, and so you mentioned two senior previous trainers and one, some other special category of individual. So three people, one that is part-time. Are these individuals that are considered part of your temporary staff now?
Yes, they are part of our temporary staff.
Okay, all right, that's what I was trying to understand. And how many temporary staff are you anticipating bringing on that would be categorized as senior level?
In that particular area, well, we have 10 trainers.
10?
Yes, 10 trainers. And of the 10, I would say 4 fall into that senior training category.
All right, thank you. And let me just sort of ask, what is your current thinking about how you will deploy these 10 trainers, particularly given that you now have this new law that you must administer, the Local Resident Act?
Absolutely. And trainers are not necessarily deployed to vote centers. In some instances, they are. And we tend to look at volume. We look at some of our busier vote centers. For instance, I know you are aware that Turkey Thicket tends to be one of our very busy vote centers. And one of our senior trainers is always assigned to that location.
All right, well, Ward 5 residents and my very capable Ward 5 councilman, you hear that. So now we know where we can go. Ward 5 is my ward too, so taking a moment to be excited about that. I'm hoping that there is a trainer in each of the 8 wards located at least one of the vote centers. Am I correct in that
Yeah.
hope and assumption?
It's either a trainer, and we also have some BOE staff members who oversee training. The manager of our election worker recruitment and training division is very skilled, and he has a very good staff here in the office, full-time staff. And they also visit vote centers, and we have roving details once early voting begins. So in addition to relying on election workers who are assigned to vote centers, we also have very capable staff members who are able to assist at vote centers as well.
All right. I wanted to have any of these plans that relate to the elections operations that you've shared with us been finalized to date? Or are they still being tweaked since we are a few months away from election?
Our plans, for the most part, have been finalized. But as you know, there are some things that could potentially adjust our schedule. We'll have to see the number of petition challenges we have and appeals, because we have to make sure we exhaust all of that prior to conducting our lottery for ballot access. Also, as we get feedback, we may tweak our communications plan. So we develop our communications plan well in advance, but based on information we receive, sometimes we will add an additional postcard mailer to address a concern that has been identified. We may try to amplify some of our social media due to information that comes in. So it is pretty finalized, but as you know, we always have to be flexible, and we always have to be in a posture where we can adjust as needed.
All right, so when you mentioned the lottery for ballot access, what do you foresee to be some issues with that?
Don't foresee any issues with the lottery itself. Right now, that's scheduled for April 12th. And once we have all of our candidates, we conduct a public lottery so that it's not alphabetical with how you appear on the ballot, but it is by lottery so that nobody has any type of advantage just based on where their last name falls in the alphabet. And so on the 12th of April, we will conduct that lottery virtually so individuals can see the names being selected and the placement for each contest on the primary election ballot. And then after we have the positioning of all the names for the ballot, we go through a pretty intense ballot review process where we're in teams and we ensure the accuracy of each and every contest, each and every name spelling, each and every word on the ballot is viewed dozens of times to ensure that it's completely accurate.
Ms. Evans, if I wanted to list my name as happy to vote in 2024 and use that many characters, would that be permitted?
It would not. We have regulations in place that speak to how your name appears on the ballot. Essentially, you are to use your given name or a derivative of your given name. And so we will provide information as far as whether our preliminary determination suggests that you do or do not meet the criteria that we have. That is a process that can be appealed. And so that is, where we are, but we do stay away from campaign slogans, if you will, and things that would suggest a particular platform or suggest your alignment with a particular party.
All right, and so so there's no regulation regarding the number of alphabets or characters that my name can spell out. It's more about whether or not it's my given name and whether or not I want to include a nickname, or that's kind of like what you're sharing with us.
Yes, yes. And of course, the nickname has to be a modified version of your given name.
All right, okay. You hear that? Communications, you made some reference to communications and how you may have to amplify an issue that perhaps has been discussed on social media. So you might need to send a notice to every registered voter. Is that what I'm hearing?
It depends on what we have identified. For instance, one of the campaigns in their campaign literature, they recently sent out information with the wrong dates for early voting. And so we had to notify that campaign and tell them that the dates on their campaign literature were incorrect. And so now we are in a position where we are really trying to position ourselves as the trusted source for information. And we've had to step up our social media efforts and really need to ensure that our messaging incorporates the correct dates so that voters don't get confused, because we don't want voters showing up to a vote center on a day when vote centers are not open.
Ms. Evans, what is the requirement on the part of the board to send a pre-election notification to the registered voters list?
Could you clarify that question?
What I'm asking is, I believe there is some requirement for the board to send correspondences to the registered voters list, maybe even annually, but certainly prior to an election. In other words, the mail ballot is, I do not consider it a notification from the board. Do you? Is that your thinking?
Well, there are certain things that we do provide to registered voters leading up to an election. We do, and we're required to prepare a voter guide that goes to households leading up to to an election. And we provide notification in, for instance, the Washington Post with ballots once they are completed, and we are required to publish those ahead of an election. I'm not sure I have the full understanding of your question, but those are things we are required to do as far as notifying the public about what is going to be contained in the process, and who's on the ballot, and vote centers, the voter guide, and then the newspapers. But then, we also engage in a pretty comprehensive communications campaign, even with things that we are not required to do, as far as multiple postcard mailers. We have utilized door hangers to send teams out to individually place information at residences throughout the district, but then also yard signs with QR codes that have information regarding all of the vote center and mail ballot drop box locations. And I think the main thing that we are trying to communicate, which will really be part of our first postcard mailer at this point, is the fact that we need voters to verify their voter registration information. Even if you think it's correct, we're really trying to emphasize the fact that please go to our website. Please ensure your information is accurate, because we have our first file that we send to our mail house vendor, and that file is sent based on what we have in our voter registration database. And for voters to receive their ballots timely, we really need them to go in and check their information. We have several voters who, for instance, changed parties, and they didn't think it was a big deal until they realized they got the wrong ballot for the primary election. And so we're really trying to get voters to take ownership to ensure that their voter registration is accurate.
And so when do you send the correspondence to all of the voters to remind them to check for whether or not this is the correct voter registration that they have?
We're working on the postcard now. And so that should go out within the next couple of weeks. But we've already started flyers and social media engagement around that.
All right, so each registered voter by the address that they're registered at should receive a postcard near the end of this month or the first week in April?
Yes,
All righty. And the voter guide, are you doing a voter guide for the primary?
yes.
And when would that go out?
That is scheduled to go out about May 15th.
May 15.
Yes.
All right. And the Washington Post ad, what about the community publications? What about the Informer?
Yes, part of our communications plan includes television, radio, and newsprint. We also found in certain communities where there are issues with digital divide, we've used advertisements on the back of buses. So we do have a variety of ways where we try to reach each and every voter where they are.
All right, well, if I'm a reader of newsprint and I only read the Informer, will there be information in the Informer about the upcoming election, or do I need to run out and get a Washington Post?
The Informer is one of the newspapers we utilize.
All right, thank you very much. One of the biggest areas of concern is, you may recall, the discussions that we've had in the past about how the current law affecting Board of Elections, I think it's 1001, which deals with this whole arena of the board changing the precinct boundaries every 5 years. Can you tell me what's going on with that? Because earlier this year, we put out information based on conversations that indicated that the precinct was no longer going to be the focus of the voting process, but that we in turn would be focused, as we have been for the last two elections, via vote centers. So can you help me understand what kind of information we should be sharing from the council about the process that is unfolding?
Absolutely. And the term precinct has been traditionally used in two different contexts. So in the past, first, voters in DC are divided into precincts. And so most recently, we had 144 precincts, and everyone was assigned a precinct based on their geographical location. We had precinct-based voting. So based on your precinct number, that was where you went to vote. And so that was a way to identify and distribute voters across the 144 precinct locations. Now that the Elections Modernization Amendment Act requires us to do vote centers, we no longer have precinct-based voting. And so anyone can go anywhere. And so even though we have individuals divided into what we historically call precincts, they are not divided into those precincts for voting purposes. And so our goal was, since your precinct does not define where you go vote, it's really now just a subsection of voters. And so that's all it is a subsection of voters in a particular area. You can glean information if you're looking to get information about that subset of voters. And our proposal, since we're no longer voting according to that precinct assignment, our proposal is not to eliminate precincts, but to have precinct boundaries synonymous with SMD boundaries. And so those would be smaller subsections that would allow you to get more granular information on a particular group of voters. If you still want to do a larger subset of voters, you can take multiple SMDs that would roughly translate to what used to be a precinct area and still glean information about that particular set of voters. And so we are in no way trying to get rid of the term precinct or rewrite anything to strike precinct. But since we are changing the boundaries of the precinct, if they overlap with the boundaries of the SMD, that is one less data point individuals need to be aware of. You still get the same information regarding a group of voters, but there's just no practicality in having your precinct, as we formerly looked at precincts, to have that assignment to vote.
All right, well, I thank you, and of course, you probably will have to repeat that many times as there are those who remember very strongly, we voted by precinct, and those who, yes, they recognize the vote centers, but they are still within my precinct, as one man told me the other day. So I'm sure you're going to have to get that information out. I would certainly recommend that information be contained in one of these correspondences that go out. In fact, both of them. The voter guide, it would be very helpful. And certainly, if you want me to verify my registration, you might just put a little asterisk there and let me know what this configuration really means. That
Yes,
would be very helpful.
yes, and just so you know, it is a proposal at this point that was submitted to the council, and we do not have approval on that proposal. So at this point, we are moving forward with the traditional precinct-based assignment model for the 2024 election cycle, because to change those assignments will require modifications to our voting equipment, and we need certain lead time to do that. And now that we are well into March, we don't have the adequate lead time to complete that realignment.
Well, thank you for that. Let me just ask you then, tell me how the ballots will be tallied in the primary and general election of 2024, and whether or not they will be tallied and attributed to a geographical area of the city different from the 2022 election.
As far as the difference between 2022 and 2024, the way we are moving forward now, there will not be significant differences. We will just have to make some adjustments to ensure that ANC and ward boundary lines are properly aligned. No significant differences between 2022 and 2024.
And when you say, but we will have to make sure that the boundaries are aligned, what does that mean? Walk us through what you're speaking of, please.
Yes, so as you know, we went through redistricting in 2022. And so there were some changes to the boundaries. And so we would just need to make sure that we look at some of those fringes it will not be a massive undertaking, but just to make sure that everything is in proper alignment.
All right. So have you identified the number of areas where the alignment is off that you must work on to bring it into one precinct or the other, I guess is the right question.
Don't have those numbers in front of me right now. It's not a huge undertaking, but I can get that information to you so that you can have an appreciation for the shifting we will need to do.
All right. And tell me, does this mean any additional hardship on the part of this election process? At one time, I know you had indicated you would have almost 700 different data points that you would be concerned with as opposed to the, what, 349 data points.
Yeah, I think your question, do we foresee any additional challenges or difficulty with doing that? No, we do not.
All right, okay. Appreciate that. So when we are in the vote center observing the tallying is done by what is on the ballot. And the ballot would reflect the single member district within the advisory neighborhood commission. And it also would reflect the precinct number. Am I correct?
It would have the precinct number for the primary. I don't think the SMD information is on the primary ballot.
So when I get my ballot, it will just have the precinct. It will not tell me the single member district I'm in.
For the primary election, I would need to verify what, yeah, I just need to verify what is on that,
Okay.
like on the header of that ballot. I know it has the precinct number on the header of that ballot. I
All
just,
right.
certain, but I can get that information to you in short
All
order.
right. Okay, because I'm thinking if it has the precinct number and no single member district and then single member district in the general election when I'm voting for the ANC representative for my single member district, you know, I'm just wondering how we, okay, all right. Just thinking about the modifications that would help us all to understand the boundaries that we're in. Um,
Okay, and I did just get information that I was correct. The SMD information is not on the primary ballot.
Okay, so it is not. Do you think that it would be helpful to have it on there so we would know?
We haven't received information that would provide a helpful data point. Of course, we're always open to suggestions and exploring a different ways of looking at things. As far as our template, I don't know what the lead time is to modify the template for the ballot, but I can look into it.
Okay, I'm just wondering, just thinking about uniformity, trying to, as much as possible, have systems that are a little more uniformed across the government. Are there any vote centers that have historically had issues?
I wouldn't say vote centers that have historically had issues. We did have in 2022, 9 vote centers where we did have to address issues with our ballot on demand printers. And so we were able to do that and come up with a long-term solution because we were using two models of BOD printers, and we found that one model was more reliable than the other. So in my testimony, I did mention the fact that we are working with contracting and procurement to ensure we have the model that did not have the issues in 2022.
All right. Um, Can we talk a little bit about any recruitment fairs that you have coming up, or is that how you recruit your workers?
It is. We conduct a number of voter education and outreach events. We have months where we have actually had 50 outreach events in a single month. We attend naturalization ceremonies, we attend festivals, fairs, and even when individuals complete the voter registration application, there is a question as to whether or not they are interested in serving as an election worker. And that information goes to our voter education, our election worker division, to our call center, and they reach out to those individuals to see if they are interested in serving as an election worker. We're also working with, as we have in the past, organizations interested in adopting a precinct on election day. And so we have civic groups and organizations within DC that choose to adopt a vote center, and then members of that organization essentially take the lead on the operation of that individual vote center.
So what does take the lead mean? And does it mean that
It means
you recruit neighbors in the,
Yeah.
or people from the neighborhood, residents from the neighborhood to be the election workers, or?
to be election workers. So for instance, we've had sororities, and they have gotten groups of their members to come, and that vote center is essentially staffed by members of that particular sorority. We've had groups who reach out to us, like the Links, interested in doing something similar, coming in, and it would be members of the organization pretty much solely responsible for staffing that vote center. We do make sure there is support, but they go through the same election worker training. They must still pass the required quiz at the end of the training to ensure they have the appropriate knowledge. And we ensure that people are trained in all the positions necessary to operate that vote center fully. And as I mentioned, we do have expertise, staff expertise, and also technical expertise that is readily available should assistance be needed at that vote center.
All right, well, thank you. Just 1 minute, please. Well, I want to thank you very much for your testimony today. And as has been our custom, we'll continue to keep you front and center so that the public can always know what's going on that will affect them. I'd like to thank Director Monica Evans for her testimony in today's roundtable hearing. And many thanks for the opportunity to discuss the preparations for the 2024 election. I'm looking forward to continuing this dialogue, perhaps in May, just before in-person early voting in the June 8th primary begins, and again in the following months through the November general election. If the public has any additional thoughts or would like to submit written testimony regarding the performance of these agencies, please email it to seal@dccouncil.gov, and that's CEAL@dccouncil.gov. It will be included in the hearing record. The record will close at 5 p.m. on Monday, April 1, 2024. And the next meeting of the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor is scheduled for Monday, March 25th, starting at 9 a.m. The budget hearing will involve the Department of Human Resources, the Department on Aging and Community Living, the Office of Inspector General, and the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. This concludes today's hearing. With that, the time is now 12:34 p.m. on March 18th, 2024, and the meeting is adjourned. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councilmember.